Today I want to tell you about the ex-weed smoker's guide to a better trajectory. Just had this vision in my head. That's what I want to call it. A better trajectory. So quitting weed, or knowing that you need to quit weed and majorly cutting back or whatever management, although we've talked this before, managing it is very difficult. Far better just to get a quit going. Now when I talk about a quit going, that could be 4 days or it could be 400 days. But when you realize that you don't want to smoke weed anymore, you begin thinking to yourself, what's better? Or if you aren't thinking that, you quickly will as soon as you're on your quit. So I want to just discuss the next part after you quit the weed. What are you going to do? Obviously, you're making the decision to quit weed because you want to better yourself in some way or the other. And once you decide how you want to better yourself, or that you actually just want to better yourself, you're going to go through all these layers and have to make up your mind about what it is you're going to do. So I want to talk about that in particular. I think it can be broken down into 4 different categories. It can be broken down into the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual. And when I say spiritual, I mean 2 capital G's. That's either gratitude, gratuity, the gratitude muscle, or it's God, capital G. So those are the 2 capital G's. But I think beginning with the physical is probably the most important. Just the actual act of smoking weed every single day, it leaves you intoxicated. Let's just be honest. It's an intoxicant. So getting in shape, I would say, is more important than any of it. What are you going to do to get in shape? Start small. That's all I can say. I think just movement every single day. Even if you're going to the park that's in your neighborhood, walking to the park, basketball underneath your hand, underneath your arm, going to the basketball court and shooting around the world and only letting the ball bounce once. That's what I'm talking about. Going to the woods and getting a walk and maybe stopping mid-walk and doing some lunges or some squats or some push-ups, or there's a branch hanging and you do some pull-ups. Maybe it's getting a sprint in on that walk. Obviously, the more traditional things is lifting weights, doing a high-intensity interval training workout hit. But getting in shape, I would put before almost anything. It's like you're literally taking yourself to rehab. And I don't mean rehab like the counseling part and all that. I mean like physically rehabilitating your body. Getting good sleep, getting good food. So the physical aspect covers all of those things. I think that's the first step towards an ex-weed smoker's guide to a better trajectory, is the physical aspect of it. Let's talk about the emotional part. Now, the emotional part obviously is dealing with yourself. Let's face it, we weed smokers are filling holes. We're maybe escaping from something. We're hiding from something. We're coping. So when we take that away, there's like an expanse. There is something that's opened, and it's open space. What are you going to do with the open space? Now, there could be some resentments there. In a future video, I'm going to take you through an exercise that I've used in my past to get not so caught up in resentments, letting resentments go. I do really believe that carrying resentments is like poison. I used to feel, I have 4 kids, 2 different moms, and I pay child support to both moms. And even though I'm 50% custody and 100% dad, I still pay. And for a long time, I was resentful about that. But I went through an exercise, and I've gone through it several times, to help me let go of that resentment. When you let go of that resentment, you're free. Because I don't want to fill my empty space after not smoking weed with just being resentful. And I also want to acknowledge that maybe a lot of times I was smoking weed to cope with that resentment. Anyway, letting go of resentments. The next emotional part is, I would say journaling, but it's really just understanding where you've come from, where you are now, and where you want to go. You can just write that down and make sense of it. Not in your head where it's just living and staying, but actually write it down where you could refer to it. And you could really know your song well while you're standing on top of the mountain, so to speak. So I would say that's the other emotional part. The other emotional part overlaps a little bit with the mental, and that is writing a map. So you know where you've been, you know where you are now, and you know where you want to go. If we just stick onto where we are now and where we want to go, and we create a map, and that map isn't just literally where we want to go, like, hey, I want to go from a 0 side hustle, 0 second income to X income with a side hustle that I really like. That's just an example. So that would be a map, but it's not just how you do that, it's also how you want to be in that. So for example, I never want to lose sight that the most important thing to me is being a good father. That is numero uno. I know that when I'm 100 years old and I'm looking back at my life, I want to know that I was the best father that I could possibly be, that I always put my kids number one, that I have been a provider and a protector. So how do I have to be in order to be that? Certainly not smoking weed every single day, right? But it's not just the weed, it's all the other aspects too. How do I want to be? What type of person do I want to be? So I got a map. This is where the mental and emotional, because you are going to have to put in some emotional labor, and obviously mentally you really have to be thinking about where you are now and where your future is going, to the trajectory. Now if we full on get into the mental, I think, again, this is where that open space of not smoking weed anymore comes into play. And so mentally, what are you going to do to fill the space that's healthy? A couple things that I've done to fill the space is start a side hustle. And that also fits a need that I have for making more money on the side. I have a good day job, but I also want more. And keeping up in these inflationary times with 4 kids, well, that takes some doing. That takes some cash. So channeling the space I used to fill with smoking weed with mentally engaging in something more productive financially. It's also, I'm building skill sets. I am a freelance writer, and I help businesses get the words right, get the communication right, put it on their websites, put it in their emails and their newsletters, etc., etc. And in order to do that, I have to become a better writer. It's called copywriting. It's called content marketing. It's what led me to making these videos in the first place, documenting my personal journey with not smoking weed anymore. So I think another hobby, it could be a hobby, okay, so that was actually making money, that's actually having a side hustle, that's more business oriented, again, mental, having a better trajectory, got to engage yourself mentally, can't just veg out watching Netflix. So it could be in the path of entrepreneurship, side hustleism. It could also be a hobby I currently have right now, and this definitely helps me with cravings and coping, not smoking weed, is chocolate. Not Nestle or Hershey bullcrap. I'm talking the good stuff, fair trade, bean to bar. When you look at the ingredients, it's like cocoa beans, raw organic cane sugar, and that's it, maybe milk. So that's what I'm talking about. I've really gotten into the nerding out, like fine wine, like a marijuana strain, like cigars, something like that. So that's a hobby. Mentally, it took some doing to know that I wanted to do this. It's being aware of myself. And then, as I already mentioned, the fourth aspect of creating a new trajectory for oneself after quitting a substance like weed, when you have all this open space, is the spiritual aspect. And again, when I talk about spiritual, I mean one of and or two things. I mean capital G, God. Finding God, getting a relationship with God. And I'm also talking about gratitude, because it's really hard to be negative and grateful at the same time. And so if you could strengthen the gratitude muscle, you're going to be so much better off. Okay, so what I just told you was an ex-weed smoker's guide to creating a better trajectory for oneself. Because obviously, quitting weed is the point, but then what? How are you going to build a better trajectory for yourself? And that's the question. And I'm saying the answer, or more so, the understanding, is to build out on these four aspects, which are the physical aspect, get in shape. Physically, you gotta be feeling good, healthy, confident, capable, and strong. Emotionally, I talked about understanding where you have been, where you are now, and where you want to go, and creating a map to that. I talked about giving up resentments. Mentally, I talked about adopting a skill set, learning something new. I also talked about a hobby and engaging in something that you actually enjoy, that's fun. And then I talked about the spiritual aspect, which is two capital G's. It's finding a relationship with God. He is there for you whenever you need him. And it is being grateful, because it's impossible to be resentful and grateful at the same time. All right, well, this is my channel. I'm making videos. I had this idea. I don't know if I like the set of making a video when I drive, but this is what I'm doing today, because I'm just documenting my process of creating a better trajectory for myself. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a comment. Your comments mean so much to me. Subscribe, like. If you're in a tough moment, you can text me. 269-389-9801. You can also go to postable.com/Eric Walker 1. And I'm a believer in putting the phone down and actually putting pen to paper and sending letters. And I think that is a great way to build a community. And if you want to be a part of that, if you want to receive a letter from me and write me back, I'm not talking about being pen pals or anything like that, but hey, just the touch point. Getting off the phone, I think it's important. So, in a nutshell, that's where I am. Have a great day.